I'm going to go straight into the next question. What are the common myths? We'll break them apart. We have pneumatic and we have cordless. What are the common myths associated to these two?
Oh, the common myth. Well, the first common myth, it's associated to both.
Yeah.
The first common myth is torque.
Yeah.
There's all these numbers out there that get rattled around called breakaway torques, and that's probably got to be, the greatest myth in the whole industry. I've read things where things have 2,000 Newton meters of torque, and I shake my head and I'll give you a good example of why it's a myth, just to give you a good reason. If I go and get a standard 1/2-inch ratchet wrench or breaker bar, and I put a socket on the end of it and I put it in a test machine to test it, I'll break the anvil on that breaker bar at somewhere around 800 to 1,000 Newton meters. That's the strength, the torsional strength of the steel. There is no way you can make more than 1,000 Newton meters.
Where does the 2,000 come from?
Exactly.
Right.
The 2,000 comes from a theoretical number. Some engineer somewhere, we won't degrade who he was, but came up with a theoretical measurement that discounts friction, discounts all sorts of things in the real world that don't exist. That is the number one myth. I often say to people, if you want to know the real number, halve the one that's published, because that's closer to the.
What's the old saying? The old saying was horsepower gives you top end, but torque tells you how far you move the wall.
Is
that right?
Correct.
Torque's always been a big thing on these, because obviously the most important thing is obviously the torque settings on certain applications. But you alluded off camera a little bit earlier on, they really should be what you call a nut runner, where you do them up and then you set them up.
That's certainly with the ratchet wrench, like you were holding there before. Ratchet wrenches are that. They're nut runners. They should be run up and then used as a standard ratchet to bring it up to tight for two reasons. One, it'll make the tool last a whole lot longer for you. You won't be damaging the actual ratchet part of the tool by bringing it under unnecessary load. But two, it's all about having that feel. I mean, this is where we get back to the argument is this argument about cordless versus air, or should it be cordless versus air versus hand? One of the things that we know, inherently we know because we're in the industry, when you're doing something up, that feel by hand of when something's not quite right is something you can't get out of a tool. If you go to that mechanical system straight away, you've lost most of that feel. So let's face it, you don't do up head bolts with an impact wrench because that you've got to have the feel and to get the torque.
And I think all the mechanics out there, and I look down the camera and talk to them all, they've all had a tool, be it a pneumatic or a cordless. They've done something up, they've come away, and the nut's still loose. Now, I don't think anybody's ever done it with a handheld ratchet, a stubby ratchet with a long socket on the end. You're doing it up. You know when it's tight. It plays back to the feel, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
You can't replace the feel.
You can't replace the feel. And on the same token, you don't know how tight. You've got it right. You don't know how tight it's going to be. Have I over-tightened it or under-tightened it? Like, these are things that you can't get without actually doing it by hand. But what's interesting is the market in all of the tools has definitely come back to, owning probably 2 or 3 different versions of things and then using them where appropriate. Right here on the table, we've got tools that go from 100 Newton meters, real torque, all the way up to 1,000 Newton meters, real torque in something like actually I think it's about 1,100 in the bigger 3/4 impact wrenches. You get out the tool, it does the right job. Interestingly enough, it's not the big tools that get used all the time. It's actually, the little tools, this size and this size, because you don't want to risk damaging something. So you always tend to underdo it so you can finish it by hand.
It's the sledgehammer if you need it.
Absolutely. If you need it, it's there. But it's interesting that when I look at tools and the amount of usage they get, and we start looking at when they come in for service and whatever, it's the little tools that absolutely get hammered all day, every day. They're the ones that are doing the hours of work. The bigger tools are doing minutes of work. And it's interesting how in the middle of all that, you end up with people using, the tools that are the right size for the right job, and they're generally undersized, if that makes sense.